What's going on, y'all? Welcome to the Blown Coverage Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Waiver Wire Queen. In today's episode, we are going to re-rank our top 10 running backs in fantasy football. This is our post preseason running back rankings. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. We have a lot of great content which will help you throughout your fantasy football season. And if you have those last minute late drafts leading up until Thursday, check out some of our videos. We have a lot of content which will help you prepare for those drafts. Let's get into this top 10 rankings. Rankings are pretty much the same in regards to the players, just a little bit of movement. Coming in at number 10, we have Alvin Kamara with the Saints. The quarterback is Winston. Winston is looking pretty good. I expect that offense to be a whole lot better than it was in 2021. It was horrible at times, a lot of times. Kamara was dealing with injuries. We all know Michael Thomas didn't even play. So they didn't even have I don't even want to say they had a top 30 wide receiver on the roster. It was horrible. Okay. It just wasn't a good season. Tight end position was horrible. Come around to 2022, it's going to be a whole lot better. Winston will be a lot better. Again, 2021 didn't have a lot to work with. This year should have a healthy Michael Thomas at full strength. Alvin Kamara is playing. Legal issues may move on until the 2023 season, so we don't have to worry about a suspension potentially. We'll look towards that in 2023. They signed Jarvis Landry, and they drafted the talented wide receiver Chris Olave. They have all the weapons they need, and you will see improvements this year. Michael Thomas, it's crazy because maybe 2 years ago, one of the top two wide receivers in fantasy football. Now he may be a late sleeper, out produce his ADP because a lot of people are afraid to draft him. But again, Thomas being back and having those other weapons at the wide receiver position will help Alvin Kamara. And you also got to understand that Winston will be better this year. It just wasn't great for Kamara. One thing he hasn't done is produce 1,000-yard season. I don't expect him to do that this year. He's going to really have more of an impact as a receiving back. So you should expect him to have some yards rushing, but when you look at his receiving stats, it's going to be similar, maybe 700 rushing yards, 700 receiving yards, some touchdowns, receptions. That's how it's going to go for Alvin. Okay, 898 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns, which was a career low, and a career low in yards per carry at only 3.74. We need him to be much better. And in receiving, it was just not great. 47 receptions, 439 yards, 5 touchdowns, career low in yards. I expect him to be at 700. I'm sorry if that is how you make your money because you are a receiving back. I need to see you at 700 and over. So again, if he is your guy, just know he's still in my top 10. He may actually move up in the rankings. Just got to see a little bit more of what they're going to do this year. They have a new coach. Technically, this is the first year with Winston and Thomas. So we have to see how they all gel together on offense. Coming in at number 9, we have Javonte Williams with the Broncos. I think he was ranked a little bit high early on, but I have him in the right spot because there's just some wide receivers higher up in the ratings that I do expect to have better seasons statistically than Williams. But Williams is in position to really take off. Just understand what he did with a horrible offensive line and terrible quarterback play. Still was able to produce 903 yards and 4 touchdowns, 43 receptions, 316 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns. That's solid for a rookie. And you pretty much were committee early on. He started becoming more of a lead back later on in the season, but you were sharing the load with Melvin Gordon. He's going to share the load again with Melvin Gordon, but again, he's going to be the lead back. And I don't think it'll be a 50-50 split. You'll see more of Javonte, but they don't want to overuse him. So Melvin Gordon is there, and they worked well together in 2021. So I don't see why it cannot work. He will definitely go over 1,000 yards this season. You have a better quarterback because you have Russell Wilson. Again, that offensive line is a bit shaky. So we'll have to see if the offensive line improves. It was one of the worst in the NFL last year. Let's see if they can improve slightly, because again, Williams was able to produce a good season with a shaky offensive line. If they improve this year, he'll be even better. So not ready to throw him back into the top, but top 10 is good, and I expect him to produce like a top 10 running back. And if you have him in a dynasty league, you have a very good young running back, and he played all 17 games, which is very impressive. Coming in at number 8, we have Nick Chubb with the Browns. And the reason why I have Nick Chubb ranked 8th is because early on, I think it's going to be a little bit hard with Jacoby Brissett. I think things will really take off once Deshaun Watson is back on the field as the starting quarterback for the Browns, which is going to be weird seeing him as the quarterback for the Browns, but it is what it is. Things that's going to help Chubb is on a good offensive line. Kareem Hunt is going to take away some of those touches, but again, we know that Nick Chubb is not going to be a great PPR back, but in a standard league, Nick Chubb can miss a few games. Kareem Hunt can take some of those targets and some of those touches, and Chubb is still going to produce. Think about it. Only 228 attempts, 1,259 yards, 8 touchdowns. Simply impressive, especially when you figure he missed games, okay? He missed 3 games, still able to get over 1,200, almost 1,300 yards. That is very good. Just imagine if they were utilizing him more and less Kareem Hunt, which they're not going to do. But if he was just the lead back and there was no 1A or a 1B or slightly 1A, 1.5A or whatever, then Chubb should be a top 5 back. But again, when you have other factors in the mix, not going to be quite in my top 5, but definitely in my top 10, because I don't know too many running backs outside of my top 10 that's going to miss games and still almost produce 1,300 yards and have a good season with horrible quarterback play. But again, quarterback play will become consistent and much better once Watson is on the football field. So best believe Chubb will finish in the top 10. Again, they will run the ball a lot more early on because Watson isn't there. And Brissett, he's serviceable, but it's just another type Baker Mayfield type situation. And again, they ran the football a whole lot with Baker Mayfield. So expect them to run the football a lot, which benefits Chubb, but you'll see Hunt out there too. So that takes away a little bit, but still very good. Coming in at number 7, I have Dalvin Cook with the Vikings. Dalvin Cook is another one of those running backs that will miss some time and he will still produce. He has Kirk Cousins as his starting quarterback. Kirk is very underrated. A lot of people just want to stay away from Kirk, but when you look at his stats, he produces. Still going to get you over 4,200 yards a season and have a good touchdown interception ratio, which is going to help Dalvin Cook. But the biggest issue with Dalvin Cook is every season he misses time due to injuries. Most players get hurt, but my goodness, every year it's always something with Cook. So he's moved down the rankings and some people tend to stay away from him, but he still produces. In 2021, it still was a solid year. 249 attempts. Not bad, but it's his lowest since 2019. 1,159 yards, 6 touchdowns. Solid, but you expect more from Cook. But when you're missing time, this is what happens. Receiving wise, 34 receptions, 224 yards. Again, if Cook is on that field and he's playing more and has more touches, then he's going to produce. But again, unfortunately, that's in the back of your mind, which is why he's not in my top 5. But he's a steal at number 7, because if he can remain healthy throughout the season, then you're going to see the 1,300 yards, and he's going to have an impact on the team. Now, coming in at number 6 is Joe Mixon. I really want to push him up into my top 5, but I have a few other players who I have kind of moved around. But Joe Mixon had a very good season. He's not going to help you much as a receiving back, but at the end of the day, he's still going to be solid and help your team. Joe Burrow as his quarterback, that's going to help. The offensive line was terrible in 2021. It was atrocious, and he was still able to produce. The offensive line is going to improve. They invested a lot this offseason in that offensive line. So think about it. Great season, top 5 running back in 2021 with a horrible offensive line. So he has the potential to be even better this year. But I do believe they're going to throw the football a little bit more. You have that talented wide receiver group, Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, and T. Higgins. And then you add Hayden Hurst at the tight end position. You have a lot of weapons. They're going to throw the football a little bit more because guess what? Better offensive line. Give Joe a little more time. They're going to throw the football a little bit more. That offense is going to be fun to watch this year, but Joe Mixon will be in the mix. Again, 2021 was impressive considering the horrendous play of the offensive line. Joe Burrow most sacked, and they still made it to the Super Bowl. Just imagine what they can do with some consistency from that offensive line. 2021, again, impressive. 292 attempts, 1,205 yards, 13 touchdowns, which was a career high. Impressive with a horrible offensive line. And as a receiver, 42 receptions, 314 yards, which was a career high, but it's not that high. And then he had 3 touchdowns, but it was still a really good season from someone that I've had people say, why draft him? He's always hurt. Well, you know what? If you have him or had him, he was amazing. And y'all know what happens when I start singing. You know what to do when I start singing. Make sure you have Joe Mixon on your side. Coming in at number 5, I have Christian McCaffrey. I don't care what anyone says. I'm not ready to put Christian McCaffrey in my top 3 or top 2. I'm just not going to do it, okay? I'm not. I'd rather him burn me and end up having the best season of his career, and then I can trust him again. I just don't trust him, so I'm not going to invest a high draft pick in him. 5 is pretty high for me because I just need to be reassured that he is not going to get hurt. And that's something he can't do for me. Last 2 seasons hasn't been available for, the managers who have drafted him. 10 games in 2 seasons, that's not a lot. You need your top player on the field every week. If you are picking Christian McCaffrey prior to this season, it was probably in the top 3. Some people were picking him with the first pick, and he's only played 10 games in 2 years. That means he hasn't been available enough for you to even be drafted on your team. Because if you can only give me 10 games in 2 seasons, that's not going to help me win. That's not going to do anything for me in fantasy football. I mean, he was on his way to a good season, but again, the injuries, and it derailed his season. 99 attempts, 442 yards, and 1 touchdown. Career low touchdown, but it was all career lows, but he didn't play much, okay? And receiving wise, he is an excellent PPR back, one of the top, if not the top. But again, health is wealth, availability is important. If you're unavailable, you have no value. I don't care what your name is. And that has been the issue. But he is a high risk, high reward pick. However, I just wouldn't do it early, but there are people who are bold enough to do it, and that's on you. But there are people who are like, well, I want to go with the sure thing. But again, there's no sure thing because at any given moment, anyone can get hurt in the sport. So just got to kind of take some chances. But again, he's in my top 5. But if he were to get hurt this season, which I hope not, he's not going to be in my top 10 because I'm just not going to do it. But, going to give him a chance. And I'm hoping he's got it down and everything will be good for him this year. Coming in at number 4, we have Najee Harris, my fave, with the Steelers. His quarterback is either Mitch or Kenny. Which one? I don't know. We'll have to see. Kenny looked pretty good in preseason. Mitch looked pretty good as well. I think they'll start the season off with Mitch, and if he starts acting a little funny and looking suspect on the field, they'll pull his ass, and they're going to put Kenny Pickett in there and see what the rookie can do. Rushing wise, it was just a career year for a rookie, and he to me was overused. You simply cannot have him touching the ball over 380 plus times. What are they trying to do? Like, my goodness. Najee Harris was an older prospect. We don't want Najee Harris to be out of the NFL in 3 or 4 years because they burned him out. And they are planning on kind of cutting those touches back, which they should. But if you are planning on doing that, you draft a running back later on in the draft. They didn't add anyone, but they have identified some running backs during preseason because Benny Snell wasn't doing much for them. So let's see if some of those running backs that they added can help give Najee a break, because I'm sorry, it's just not a good idea to have him touching the ball almost 390 times again this year. That's going to be an issue. Rushing wise, 307 attempts, 1,200 yards, only 3.91 yards per carry, and 7 touchdowns. I'll tell you this, Steelers' offensive line last year was not great. Just wasn't good. Receiving wise, 74 receptions, 467 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So I'm sorry. I will tell you this. In my opinion, Najee Harris is a PPR back if he's going to continue to get those targets and have 74 receptions. Austin Ekeler had similar amount of receptions. He just had more touchdowns. So it doesn't matter what format, standard, PPR, Najee Harris should be on your side and on your team. Coming in at number 4, we have Austin Ekeler, one of, if not the best, PPR backs right now in fantasy football. He is with the Chargers, and he has one of the top 3 quarterbacks in fantasy football going into the 2022 season, Justin Herbert. One of my favorites. I say everyone's my favorite, so y'all know what that means. But you know when I start singing what you need to do. But Justin Herbert may end up finishing as the QB1 at the end of the season. And why not be on the same side with him, because he's going to get you the football. Austin Ekeler is a PPR machine. He is just impressive as a PPR back. He had some owners a little concerned at times, like, oh my God, he's going to be out. He's going to miss some time last year. But he held up for the most part. He's going to do a lot of his damage as a receiver. 2021 was just beautiful for him. It was amazing. It was a very good year. 206 attempts, which was a career high. 911 yards, another career high. 12 touchdowns, all career highs for him. 70 receptions and 647 yards and 8 touchdowns. Those type of stats from your running back is simply amazing. And that is the type of running back you want on your team in fantasy football, especially in a PPR league. Coming in at number 2, we have Derrick Henry with the Tennessee Titans. He has Ryan Tannehill as his starting quarterback. We all know the Tennessee Titans is a run-first team. First season, he actually had to miss a lot of time and be out due to injury. It was in 2022 with the foot injury. He only played 8 games. Should be 100% recovered this season. We all know they rushed him back in the playoffs, and he did not look great. They ended up getting bumped. First time they were able to got on the field and play in the playoffs. You got home field advantage just to get bumped in the first round, which really sucks. But I do expect him to be back to normal and healthy this season. So what do? You draft Derrick Henry, because Derrick Henry has been amazing. Think about it. You have Derrick Henry playing in only 8 games, and he had 219 attempts, 937 yards, and 10 touchdowns, 18 receptions, and 150 receiving yards. Think about it. Almost 1,000 yards in 8 games. He was on pace for another great season, and him and Taylor would have been competing for who was going to have the best season. I'm sorry, they were going to compete for that. He is still elite. He's getting older in running back years, but when you look at Derrick Henry is just a beast. The way he is built, you wouldn't even think he can run as fast as he does. He looks like he can play linebacker, but he's a running back. He's fast as hell, and he is the Tennessee Titans offense. Ryan Tannehill will go as Derrick Henry goes. So what should the Titans do? And what the plan is always going to be: run the damn football, give the ball to Derrick Henry, which is why they restructured that contract and he has a $2 million raise, because it is Derrick Henry or bust. If Derrick Henry is not on, or if they're not getting him involved, that team will struggle on offense. So they better get Derrick Henry the ball, and I expect them to, and because they know who they are, they know their identity, and that helps us. And so if you were considering drafting Derrick Henry, draft him with confidence, because he will produce. A lot of people just tend to be like, trying to stay away from Derrick. Don't stay away from Derrick Henry, because he's going to produce. Okay, look at the numbers. Look what he has done the last 2 years prior to getting hurt. It has been amazing. When healthy, he's going to run over whoever on defense and play well and help you win in fantasy football. So Derrick Henry is my number 2. And coming in at number 1, Jonathan Taylor with the Colts. Matt Ryan, slightly better than Carson Wentz at this stage in his career. So bye, Carson Wentz. Think about it. Carson Wentz was a bit inconsistent last year, and Jonathan Taylor went off. The Colts have an impressive offensive line. May take a slight hit due to injuries, but I still expect Jonathan Taylor to be impressive. Kind of like with Najee Harris, I want to see them kind of cut back on his touches. Let's not run this young man into the ground, especially since the running back position, they shady as hell, because they don't even most likely get to that next contract, because they feel like, running back position, we can just grab one. I understand that, but that's a whole nother conversation about the running backs and them getting paid, but they run them into the ground. Because again, look how many touches Najee Harris had as a rookie. Look at what Jonathan Taylor did in 2021 just as a running back. 322 attempts. That is simply a lot. That is ridiculous. That was more than Najee Harris. That is extreme. That needs to come down. I'm not even down to 300. No, I need to see that under 300, because we want to preserve him. We want him to be their running back in 3 years. Like, cut back on that. I'm sorry, okay? 1,811 yards. Amazing. 18 touchdowns, all career highs, career year. 40 receptions, 360 yards, and 2 touchdowns. When you total that up, that is 362 touches. I'm on my math. That is high as hell. That was lower than Najee. However, that is just too much. It has to come down. Of course, from a fantasy standpoint, we want him on the field as much as possible. But if you are in a fantasy football dynasty league, you definitely want him on the field, but you still want to have him 3 years from now, because he's young and he is the building block. You probably built your team around him, so you don't want them running him into the ground. And now, say he's done in 2 or 3 years, and now it's like, oh, okay, now I got to do this thing all over. So I expect Jonathan Taylor to be very good this year, but I expect the stats to come down a little bit, because they really need to kind of start monitoring those touches. He shouldn't have another season, especially 2 years in a row, where he has over 360, 370 touches. I want to see that come down a bit. He can still be very productive and be the number 1 running back in fantasy football without him having to touch the ball almost 370 times. So they need to figure that out and preserve this young man, because again, y'all ain't giving these running backs contracts. So let's not run them in the ground for the first 4 or 5 years of their contracts and then don't want to pay them. So cut down a little bit so Jonathan Taylor can be around in 4 years. All right, y'all, leave some comments and let me know your thoughts of my top 10 running backs. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. We have a lot of great content which will help you throughout your fantasy football season so you can stay ahead of your competition and compete at the highest level every week and beat your opponent weekly, because the goal is to win. Every week, your goal should be to improve your team and win so you can, at the end of the season, be ready to be in the playoffs and do what? Win, because that is what it's all about. We want to win in 2022. I'll see y'all on the next episode. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Blown Coverage Fantasy Football Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Blown Coverage Fantasy Football Podcast.